Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. Today, it's a fun break from the norm because we are going to be going through the many myths, mysteries, and misunderstandings from Warcraft's history. Yes, the secrets, the urban legends that spread across the player base, especially in the game's earlier days, some of which were even gobbled up by Blizzard and turned into content. So, join us today for a fun trip through memory lane, and especially if you are a new player, then there's going to be cool stuff that you've not heard of. Secrets locked behind time, just like how you should lock your mega high security passwords behind Dashlane, today's sponsor, who you'll get 10% off with at dashlane.com/Bellular. Dashlane generates high security passwords for every single site that you use, and then it automatically logs you in through its extensions or its phone app. And that means you never have to type in passwords manually, which is pretty awesome. Plus, it even works in phones, which is so darn convenient. Now, all your info is locally decrypted with your master password, so even if Dashlane servers were hacked, it would be like breaking into the bank and then finding out, oh dear, the bank doesn't have the key to the vault. They've also got dark web monitoring, a VPN, and if you use a site that gets hacked, they will bing you over a security alert. So you get all of that in one app across all your different platforms, and if you follow my link down below and you use that promo code Bellular, you'll get 10% off, which is pretty sweet. So thanks to them for supporting our team. And with that said, let's get into the urban legends of World of Warcraft. First, Tirisfal Glades, the beginning of speculation. I mean, even from its name, Tirisfal, which does, of course, make you think it is tied to the lore. But really, way back in the day, Classic was the cradle of speculation and urban legends, and really nowhere more so than the Tirisfal Glades. It's got a legacy in Warcraft, with loads of referential vignettes being there. You've got the Fairy Ring, where Malfurion communed with the local spirits in War 3. There's the Sound of Arthas committing regicide that plays out in Lordrun when you actually go into the throne room of the Undercity. All of those really cool things. Of course, though, this sense of mystery was the most keen in the Whispering Forest. Now, this is a really cool place. Eventually, a fairy ring and proper things were added where the little fairies and the spirits did a ritual, and that was added in Cataclysm, but before then, it was just pure mystery. Now, it was speculated for a long time that this is where the initial High Elves landed, and that it was actually the source of their madness, that there was something underneath the Tirisfal Glades. Well, ultimately, we would find out that there was somewhere or something underneath the Tirisfal Glades, that it was the resting place of Zakaj, a Cathaxi general, but, well, suffice to say, people thought there was a hell of a lot more back then. And of course, that's the reason why the High Elves, after noticing this madness after a few years, decided to hike up north and found quel'delar, because obviously there was some weird old god heebie-jeebies going on. And this reminds me of another location in the game, and that is the Master's Glaive, that big old god-looking corpse in Darkshore. We now know what it is. We know it's just a Cathaxi general, and that it doesn't really matter that much. But between the nearby dungeon and that, way back in vanilla, people were just so interested in what that could be. Of course, even mysteries that it could be super tied to an old god, things like that. But once again, like with Zakaj, it's a situation where sometimes finding out really what the mystery is can be a bit less satisfying than the mystery itself. But yes, the Whispering Forest was that secluded spot that really fired off the community's imagination to the point where Blizzard actually started to create lore around people's headcanon. But initially, way back before the Cataclysm changes to the area, what I remember is the player's discourse, and that WoW Insider map that drew a pentagram over Azeroth. And that pointed to significant old god locations, such as Ulduar, and one of the points on that pentagram was Tirisfal. And that led people to think, well, many things, that there could have been an old god in chains underneath the Tirisfal Glades, that it maybe even was the Rift of Aln. So yes, Legion's reveal was less impactful than those, to say the least, but this is a mystery that kept people thinking for years. And one of the strangest of all player-reported things, and something that I can self-report myself from way back in the day, is hearing the sound of rattling chains and a beating heart under that area, around that area, all the way back in, well, for me it was TBC, for many people it was vanilla. Apparently in vanilla that was actually before a heartbeat was added. But saying that, I remember this vividly, and I cannot find any clear references to this online. But I know I remember when I was in the local gaming cafe after the rowing club, a friend of mine saying, hey, come, look at this. I found this really cool thing, or heard about this really cool thing. And I put the headphones on, and I nuked all of the sounds in the game, bar sound effects, which I cranked up to maximum. And what did I hear? I heard those rattling chains. I heard that heartbeat. So was that just me going mad? Am I inventing a memory? Well, I know I heard that. Jared knows that in our team, that he heard that. And I have heard people talk about it before, but I've yet to find super solid evidence of it. So, is this just one of those spooky urban mysteries? Let me know if you remember. Next, and staying in Lordrun, there was an urban legend that if you spoke to the students of Scholomance, they would all aggro and attack you, which was a death sentence as they were hard as nails, collectively more powerful than any boss in that dungeon. Now this is a funny one because it was an urban legend, and there are conflicting accounts on Wowhead in the archives that if you talk to either Vectis or Marduk 3 times, then they would aggro. But this simply isn't true. This is an urban legend that just sort of spontaneously appeared in the player base as people talked to each other and played that game of telephone twisting information. Though it is something that likely just stemmed from how difficult of a pull that encounter was. But still, an interesting situation where, way back in the day, when people didn't really have authoritative sources and everything was based on comments on databases and hearsay, that yes, beliefs like this could just permeate the player base. Next, let's take a diversion from places and talk about things. So, quel'delar. Of course, quel'serrar was an amazing vanilla tanking weapon, and it's one that was acquired from a short quest chain that brought people to Dire Maul and to Onyxia's lair. Now, during the journey to get that in Dire Maul, you'd be talking to a highborn called Lydros. Now, Lydros would tell you this: rumors exist of a single legendary blade of quel'serrar crafted for an unknown entity by the combined might of 5 aspects. And that was it. That's all he said. And this sent players in this wild goose chase for this unfired quel'serrar blade, which we of course would later know is called quel'delar. And they were trying to get the dragons from each of the 5 aspects to use like a breath attack, even, in the hopes that quel'serrar would appear, that quel'delar would appear, that this mysterious unfired blade that this highborn spoke of would appear. And yeah, people actually went for that. People followed that mystery. And again, these were the days where people did not have or even know of authoritative sources for things. The game was not extensively data mined in the way it is today. So the idea of something being totally undiscovered was real. And that would mean that Blizzard could just put in one breadcrumb of quest text and bam, they would set off a wild goose chase. Now, of course, this unfired blade of quel'delar was eventually added to the game in Wrath of the Lich King. It was obtained from a quest chain. It was item level 232, I remember it well, where you would start by getting a battered hilt, which would drop from the Ice Crown Citadel dungeons, and if memory serves, you could then turn that, of course, into that item via a quest, or it would go for about, and I think it was about 10k gold on the auction house. Next, we've got another item that really threw people for a loop, and that is the Talisman of Binding, a legendary necklace that players could theoretically get from the Molten Core. And man, if they could, it would have been amazing. You know, it had strength, stamina, agility, and loads of fire and nature resistance, which obviously would just be dead handy in vanilla. Super alluring. And the thing is, it did drop. It only ever dropped once, and it seems to have been a mistake that it even dropped, and like it was an early attempt at itemizing a legendary. So yes, it was mistakenly added to the game, it did drop once, and that got people thinking about it, but that didn't stop players from reattempting and trying to get that to drop again and again and again for the remainder of vanilla. Of course, it never did. Now, in a world where an ultra-rare 0.1% mount is totally a thing, you can absolutely see why people may actually have still believed that they might have even had a chance of getting this, even though it was, of course, absolute bull. Next, it is time for one of the most legendary non-quest chain interactions in the entire game's history. This is truly epic, and it's one the players actually had to really just figure out the fine details of themselves. And it is the Ashbringer. the Pure Ashbringer. You see, players knew that the legendary, non-corrupted Ashbringer was actually in the game files. So, when the corrupted Ashbringer was actually added into the game, well, it started off a treasure hunt like no other. So, the epic quality sword, the corrupted Ashbringer, would drop from the 4 Horsemen encounter in Nax 40, and when worn, it would give people Will of the Ashbringer. Now, this was a buff that made the Argent Dawn hostile, but more importantly, the Scarlet Crusaders friendly. And that meant, well, it was time for some investigations. The sword would then whisper to the player, telling the wielder how it was once a pure blade, how the Scarlet Crusade was corrupt, and to kill them all. But how could you kill them all if you were friendly to them? Well, to sort this out, it was time to go to the Scarlet Monastery. And what happened here was one of the most unique events to be ever put into the game. And I think what I love even more is, it was just put there. Players just had to find out themselves by doing and testing and trying and going places. So the player would go there, and the ending of this interaction between Alexandros Morgraine and his son raised more questions than it answered, which led to the community searching Azeroth far and wide for more of these unique, spontaneous interactions to try to work out how they could get the Ashbringer. Players would bring in sources from far, far afield. An example of this was the wizard that Alexia Ironknife and Bardu Sharpeye claimed crafted some great weapon for the Crusade. So they found that out. Then players found Timalane's phylactery and thought that that was like the next step in the puzzle and that it could offer more clues. So a search for Timalane or a way to resurrect him with this phylactery was started. And this led to players basically trying to bring this phylactery to significant Scourge locations. And try as they would, there was only one remaining lead to follow up, and it ended up being dry. At the end of the monastery encounter, Inquisitor Fairbanks told us that Alexandros had a son who was alive, but he points to the sky and tells us, "The Outland, find him there." And that, in a rather authoritative fashion, brought a stop to the search for the uncorrupted Ashbringer. Truly something that was an epic set of things for Blizzard to have put into the game, and it's things like that with their new sort of secrets initiative that they've done since Legion, I just love to see. It puts so much more richness and texture into the game, doubly so when it's just your player character gets an item, that item changes their status to other people in the world and unlocks new conversational opportunities, such as that event in the Scarlet Monastery. Truly, truly incredible stuff. Next, though, we've got another big mystery. There was a locked box that players had actually convinced themselves was connected to this whole purified Ashbringer thing. In Tirisfal Glades, there was an unassuming chest with the description, Dark Cleric Salem's Chest, and to open the box, players would need a specific key. So players looked for clues around this box, then some Scarlet NPCs and one Scarlet Captain called Sanders milled about, but there was really very little else in the area. But then the mystery was made real when a comment on Thoughtbot, of course the classic database, appeared. And it read this: "The lost key is what you're looking for. Once hidden amongst the rubble of a statue out of place in the great city turned forsaken." Now, it continues for quite a bit, but the point is the players now began looking through the rubble of the Undercity for the key to this chest. And this led to some copycat riddles which, whilst they were creative, they just led players on a wild goose chase. So, congratulations, Thoughtbot commenter, you truly wasted so much player time. And in 2007, in response to all of this, a GM finally put a stop to the speculation stating that the item was not in-game. But of course they just said that, the mystery didn't really end there. And if you visit that area right now, well, you'll find Captain Saunders hung from a nearby tree, with the rest of the Scarlets in piles of purple fire and no chest to be found. So yeah, something was going on with that chest, and perhaps someday we'll find out why. It does make me think of the recent lore video we did on the Scarlet Brotherhood pamphlets, so hey, maybe they have something to do with it. So, to round off vanilla, and while we're talking about vanilla legends, I remember a whole range of tricks that were played on new players that kind of passed on into infamy. Like, and this was a great one, standing in Stormwind and manually typing Orcish and then seeing what happened, because players would then whisper and ask, oh, how did you do that? And then what people would do is they tell them, that there was actually just a book in the Orgrimmar library that would teach Orcish if you used it. So of course, a lot of very impressionable players would then die in pursuit of this mysterious, imagined book that would teach them Orcish. Another great one is rogues who would use a custom macro to broadcast text that they had pickpocketed a player for 50 silver. That, of course, would lead to quite a lot of confusion and hijinks. Then another great one that Jared fell for was the wall jumping into the uninstant Zul'Gurub, because there was supposedly in there a secret cave with a vendor that sold the Bengal Tiger mount. And while I don't actually remember me searching for the Bengal Tiger mount, when I was in that same gaming cafe after the rowing club, I do remember me and the same friend who showed me the whispers or the rattling chains and heartbeat in Tirisfal Glades. I remember being shown one of the YouTube videos way back of that cave, where there would be a vendor who would sell you the Bengal Tiger. Of course, that was never actually in-game, but that didn't stop many people searching for that cave. And really, in a world though, where quests could be spanning continents, the idea of just off-the-beaten-path stuff was totally believable, especially when so many of us were so much younger and so much more impressionable than we are today, where really today, we're just a bunch of jaded old pricks in many ways. Next, let's talk about some truly bizarre stuff. In 2008, a video was released claiming that the distorted whispers around spirit healers were actually subliminal messages saying, "Warcraft," and "give us your money." Now, as much as I'm ready to believe that there is significance in what those spirit healers are saying, I would say that Blizzard is probably aware that giving people small rewards for just grinding more and more and more will probably get them more money than subliminally messaging people through spirit healers. But still, that one really did catch on. I remember from back in the day, and I'm sure if you were playing the game back then, that you remember it too. People really did believe that for a period of time. And then sometimes things just seem strange at face value, but are actually just a random Easter egg, such as the Critter War in northwestern Mulgore. You see, periodically, the prairie dog would pull a knife, or a rabbit would appear with an axe, and they begin skirmishing with the other armed critters. Now, this isn't so much an urban legend, it's more a constant conflict that, is just sort of always going on over there. Now, this could have been a reference to the Christmas critters of South Park, or maybe Happy Tree Friends, which you might have remembered from back in the day, rather than being anything that was truly a mystery of any lore significance. But it was pretty cool, and players found it when they were searching around Mulgore for no reason. And, people actually created betting circles, with the Skull Helmet Mouse dual-wielding pistols being quite the player favorite. Of course, by the time we got to Cataclysm, the whole meta really leading up to expansions had changed. Every alpha build would be stripped for parts, cleaned out for useful information, turned into YouTube videos and articles, data mining. Platforms that traditionally hosted guides and player comments were now hosting, hyper-detailed breakdowns of data mined goodness that we all ended up enjoying consuming. We still do today. But I really do think that Blizzard enjoyed that player-driven just exploration and that crazy stuff where nobody really knew what was going on. And Blizzard obviously capitalized on a lot of our headcanons. They put quel'delar into the game. The Cathaxi General in Tirisfal. They did all of that. But now, for Blizzard to drive mystery, they've got to intentionally put things in the game and then really encrypt them, make them truly mysterious. And this led to the creation of the secret finding community on Discord. And there are, of course, many mysteries that we've covered over the last few years on the channel, but a great example is it's the Waste of Time belt. It is great. Now, this mystery began with a set of 22 anagrams, which were basically referenced back to Chronicle. Now, there were things such as Passive Icy Veins, which was an anagram for invasive species, and that was a clue that led people to the Everbloom incursion outside of Stormwind. And eventually, players would find themselves in an abandoned dwarf farm in the Arathi Highlands. Now, there you'd find a dead gnome, his friend, his enemies, and you'd have to interact with various things and do various emotes there until you came to the end of the mystery. And a part of that was that you had to click a potato 144 times. How? Why? Who the hell knows? But Blizzard did make people click that potato quite a bit indeed. So there you go, that is a slice of mysteries in the game. And Blizzard will no doubt be putting more into the game, but I have to wonder if we'll ever return to the urban legends of the classic era. I don't think so. I think we're too good at the game now. But, those legends, they just call out to us through time. They're just so interesting. You know, the things we fell for in our younger years. And that leads me to a question for you. What about you? What did you fall for? What were the mysteries that you totally believed hook, line, and sinker back in the day? If so, if there are ones, let me know. Let me know down below. Even pranks your friends played on you that seemed believable at the time. And hey, maybe if we get enough, we'll be able to do some sort of follow-up video to this one. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little blast into memory lane. I'm sure, if you played the game around the same time as me, most of these probably got you as well. So, I hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.